Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and this time I've got some bonus footage for you on the Tier 8 Japanese heavy tank, the Oho. This was a vehicle that I did a full tank review on about a month ago, and I had quite a lot of extra footage available in the Oho because, I don't know, it seems to be a very dominant tank. Well, even though it shouldn't really, when you think about it, I mean, I guess... well, I'm actually of a complete split opinion on this vehicle. You know, its frontal armor is just fantastic, 200mm, but it is very, very flat, and so that pretty much means that everything that has more than 200mm of penetration is going to be going through the front of it. So of course, then you have to start to angle it, try and get them to shoot at your side, hopefully miss your weak points when you're angling at the side, and just keep shooting. Now in both of the replays that I'm going to be showing you here, I'm going to be using the 150mm gun. And if you watched my tank review, you'll know, I don't know why I'm looking at the butt of the Oho there. Okay, let's just change the camera angle. So, if you watched my full tank review on the Oho, you'll know that my main decision on the Oho is which gun do you use, right? There's a 105mm gun to use, which is also called a 10cm gun. I guess they just don't care about the extra 5mm in the game, that cannot use premium ammunition, which is very, very, very awkward. Because of course this tank can meet tier 10 vehicles, and having that 215mm of penetration just doesn't feel enough when you get into a bad matchup. And so the other option is to use a 150mm gun, pretty much the same gun that you use on the tier 6 Japanese heavy tank, the Ohai, and also on the KV, the OI, yes, and also on the KV2. Now having 150mm, firing high explosive rounds with their 910 alpha damage and 75mm of penetration is great, but is it really good enough for a tier 8 heavy? What happens when you get into a matchup like this where there are a handful of tier 9 tanks on the enemy team and a load of tier 8s? None of them really I stand a chance of being able to go through frontally, but the Oho does have something going for it, and that is a crazy rate of fire on this gun. And so, even though you're only going to be wow, looks like we might have damaged his ammo rack a little bit there, because the T10 on my right-hand side just got a 3,000 damage there. Wow, that's a great result for him. Nothing I can do about this. The T-34 is going to pen me. Actually, the T-34 missed me, and it was actually the Object 704 who manages to pen me from the other side. We haven't quite spotted where the Object 704 is. We're going to have to watch out for him. But he takes out our loader. I don't want to repair the loader or heal the loader, at least for now, because I'm using a large medkit, and I might as well wait. But I should use it now, because obviously I need to put another round into the gun. So, when you're using this 150mm, it doesn't really matter how much armor the enemy has. It doesn't really matter where you hit them. Of course, you want to try and aim for their slightly weaker plates, because then you're going to be doing more damage. But we pretty much fired straight at that Ferdinand's gun, doing 369 to him. And there's that dastardly Object 704 who took a swing at us. Hopefully he's going to miss this time. Oh, cool. A little bit of a move forwards there, and so he, instead of hitting our front plate, he actually hits our well-angled side plate, and we managed to survive, probably losing about another 750 health. Nice little dink back there in our movements mean the T-34 misses us as well, and this is what you have to try and get in the Oho. One thing you might have noticed there is the gun elevation, or gun depression I should say, in this tank is all over the place, and that's because aiming down over these mini turrets in the front is just so darn awkward. And that's one reason why the 150mm, I believe, is probably the more comfortable gun on the Oho. Because on the Oni, when you chose to use the smaller caliber gun, you had more gun depression over the tank boobs, over the front of the vehicle. Whereas with the Oho, even if you use the smaller gun, the 105mm, it doesn't really make too much of a difference. So we're just, you know, plodding along with damage. I have to admit, doing 223 to a T-34 is a little bit disappointing, but I'm heavier than him, I'm bigger than him. He tries to push forwards to stop us from ramming him, which was a good play, so we don't actually really manage to do much ramming damage to him, only 37. But we're up in his face here. We managed to ricochet another shell from our right-hand side, and we're just going to try and bully this T-34 here. Now, he should have enough penetration to go through our tank, but it doesn't look like he's basically aiming very well, as he aims on the front of our tank, and you might have noticed how much I had to turn the tank there. I had to overturn the tank, almost give him my side armor to be able to depress the gun. Hopefully we'll reload in time. Yeah, just about. I think he fired as well there. Lucky he missed us. Great result to take out that tank, and now we get to go to town on the Object 704. Now here's the thing, if I was using the 105mm here, I could probably hit the tracks. But the thing is that you're taking the risk of either missing the tracks, it being absorbed by the tracks, and I have to admit, using this 150mm just feels so darn lovely with connecting your shells like that. It's up to 2,768 damage. Hopefully we can hit this Panther 88. Yep, derp in a shell, 321, and we take his tracks off. So, as you can see, I would be doing pretty much the same kind of alpha damage with all of the shells with the 105mm, but would I be bouncing them? And also, when I do get into that bad matchup where I have to deal with tier 10 tanks, am I going to be able to do anything to them at all? So 3,432 damage done here. We picked up 2 kills, and unfortunately the Oho is just too slow to be able to get over towards the east of the map. So before we take a look at the post-game stats, let's just get stuck into some more gameplay, this time on Siegfried Line. So this time the matchup is very nice. Pretty much half of the enemy team are tier 8, half at tier 7, with a few tier 6s propping up at the bottom. What does that add up to? More than 100%? Probably 2 halves and then a few extra. Yes, it does. But let's not worry about that. Another reason why I wanted to address the Oho again is that in the latest patch 9.15, the Type 4 Heavy and the Type 5 Heavy were both buffed. Those are the tier 9 and tier 10 Japanese heavy tanks. And I've been playing the Type 4 Heavy again, which is the tier 9 Japanese heavy tank, and it has been an absolute pleasure to be able to go around at 25 kilometers an hour. Previously, the tank's top speed limit was as bad as the Tortoise, as bad as the Mouse at 20 kilometers an hour, and it was just very frustrating sometimes when you were needing to either go along flat or downhill that you couldn't ever go above the 20. Now it's 25. You know what, the Type 4 Heavy does just feel a lot more mobile, and they've also given it a ground resistance buff as well, which just adds to the overall mobility. So really there's no better time to be playing the Oho to be able to go up the Japanese heavy tree, right? Especially considering that maybe you want to leave the OI experimental and the OI now, considering that both of those tanks were nerfed. But take a look what this 150mm does when you get to shoot at baby tanks. I'm sorry, Mr. Cromwell, he even had a stock turret there because he only had 700 hit points. That just feels bad. Well, actually not too bad really. This was the last game that I ever played in the Oho, at least before I played my first game in the Type 4 Heavy, and it was a pleasure of a grind, actually. The Oho was this funny tank where, when I first played it, I loved it. And then I had this whole period in the middle where I got very frustrated thinking about which gun was best to use. And towards the end, I just decided I will use the 150mm and I will play to that gun's strengths. And when I finally did that, I actually got very comfortable with the Oho, and it became quite an enjoyable grind. Also, I think playing with this gun does probably set you up more for using the large caliber gun that's on the Type 4 Heavy. And one thing to mention is the Type 4 Heavy's gun is awesome. Fair enough, its rate of fire might be pretty awkward, but when you do hit your opponents and you do 600 alpha damage with decent penetration at tier 9, it just feels absolutely lovely. So what I'm doing right now is basically trying to keep my opponents in front of me at every possible opportunity, trying to stop them from flanking me, but it looks like the Centurion is trying to sneak around the back to get a shot into me there. I'm worried about him, I see that, but I'm not actually too concerned because I do have a bunch of tanks that are preventing him from getting my backside. And when they do get the backside of the Oho, well, it's not that good for them because you've still got 150mm of rear hull armor. The SU-100 just unable to really go through the front of this tank. As I mentioned in the last replay, you don't really have to be afraid of anything that has less than 200mm of penetration. It's just pretty much going to ricochet most of the time off your front, even if you don't angle it whatsoever. Oh gosh, I'm a little disappointed that we didn't kill an SU-100 there. We hit him twice, and we only did 572 damage to him. Very disappointing there. So another thing to keep in mind that, oh, wait a minute. There we go. One thing to keep in mind as well is that I'm using a narrow pass here to hopefully try and avoid the artillery. Of course, they might be sitting in the corner, but generally what I find is that artillery like to locate more in these kind of locations, and also to be able to go around at the back. Plus, if the artillery had been located at the K1 area and I had to be really concerned about them, then they would have probably already shot me by now. So we put in a bit of a miss there against the T-32, or did I hit his gun flush? And I rammed him, but it wasn't quite enough. And that time I missed his cupola. Really bad shot there. All I had to do was to calm down and put a shot into his cupola. Instead I shot his very thick mantlet. I have a look at the WZ-131, prepare for him. And I want to just take out this T-32 quickly. And I better make a tiny bit of a misplay here. I could have stopped this WZ-131 from getting my side. But luckily, with the weight of this tank, I can squish him around. Now that he hasn't got our side armor, which is very weak, he's unable to do very much. We give him a little bit of a love bump there for 68 damage. And hopefully, all we need to do is try and force him into the open for our allies. Or we can just squish him like this. This is one of the most satisfying things about playing your big tanks, right, guys? Good night, sweetheart. So, 3 artillery left on the enemy team. SU-100, ST-81. Not really too much competition left here. But then again, I am down on low on hit points here. All it takes is 1 artillery to be able to shut us down. So, before the action heated up again there, I just... What I'm trying to say is that while I was a little bit uncertain maybe in my tank review of the OHO, I mean, firstly, make your own decision, right? I mean, I can only provide my input, but then again, it's up to you guys to make that decision that you think you're going to be happy with, right? But for me, after playing many games in the OHO, being very unsure about which gun is just more dependable, I recommend the 150mm just for convenience. It is so much more comfortable, especially when you get into those tier 10 games and when you have to deal with tanks that frankly you don't have the penetration to be able to go through frontally. So another great round for the OHO, demonstrating its monstrous frontal armor. Just be very afraid of when you do let your opponents get your weak points towards the cheeks here, and if you're shooting the OHO and he's angling like this is a free pen. And then the most thing that you've got to be you've got to be mostly concerned about when light tanks like that WZ-131 do manage to get your side, because they're going to be putting great big chunks out of your health pool. So in our first game on Desert, we managed to pick up 3,748 experience for our double 41,000 credits profit, and that's another thing that I should highlight about using the 150mm, is that unless you start firing heat rounds, which are kind of unnecessary really, then you're very consistently going to be making credits. So we finished second on damage there, that IS-8 killing that Tiger. Wow, what a blow that was at the start of the game for the enemy team, finishing on top. And we don't even finish on top of experience because this Super Pershing did apparently. Maybe we weren't spotting for ourselves that much. Nevertheless, 12 shots, 12 hits and 12 pens. And what I really wanted to highlight here is that if you angle your armor well in the OHO and are aware of the situation developing around you and just hound down your enemies one by one, it truly is an absolute beast. Next up on Siegfried Line, we were defending rather than attacking, which is a lot better to do when you're in a very slow moving heavy. We picked up a high caliber and a steel wall. Great result there. Whoa, we actually did nearly double what anyone else on our team was able to do. And a nice 1,346 base experience points would have almost certainly been an ace tanker there. We took 21 hits that game, potential damage 4,740, 3,500 blocks by our armor, and again, a very nice profit. It's almost impossible to lose credits in the OHO if you do a reasonable amount of damage and you don't fire any heat rounds. So the OHO, a solid tier 8 heavy tank with a choice of 2 guns. Just really unfortunate that there aren't premium rounds on the 105mm, and so after deliberating for a very long time, I would recommend to use the 150mm and just work with those high explosive rounds. But if you want to see my full opinion in the tank review and also a load of other great OHO replays, then simply click through up here or use that more info icon in the top right hand corner of your screen. And if you've enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like down below. It really helps the channel out. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.